That's not what I'm paid for? Okay then. I used to work for a chain of pubs who loved to have promotions tied up in red tape. At the point in this story I was technically a server on minimum wage but doing supervisor work. This had been going on for a while as the manager hadn't submitted the paperwork. In our country, if you're on minimum wage, your employer has to pay for any time you have to be available for work / required to remain on the premises. Not just if you are actively working. Manager would frequently rota me on awful split shifts like 8:30 a.m., 2 p.m. then 5 p.m., close approximately midnight by the time till / cleaning was done. Because I was the only supervisor on shift, I was expected to remain available for those middle 3 hours in case I was needed for manager stuff. Now, initially I didn't mind this so much cause the inconvenience of traveling back home to just come in again. I just chilled out with some free experiment from the kitchen and a good book in the corner of the bar. I did however change payroll if I was expected to jump back into action to add on however long it was. Few weeks into me doing this, manager noticed. Manager, why are you down for 14 hours on Thursday? I scheduled you for 12:05. Me. It picked up at 3:30 and colleague was getting slammed. Manager. But why have you changed payroll? Me. Cause that's what I worked. Manager. But you weren't scheduled to work. You chose to. Me. Cause you told me to be available during those hours. Manager. I'm changing it back. You get paid for what's agreed. Me. What about tomorrow then? I'm on the same split shift. Manager. You'll be paid for when you're scheduled to work. Don't change it again without my approval. Alright then. Have it your way. The next day. Bang on 2 p.m. I stepped off the bar. Grabbed my stuff and walked a few doors down to the local cafe. The server and the chef had my number if they needed me cause I felt guilty leaving them to it, but they agreed not to let on to the manager exactly where I was. Just to say I'd left if he came downstairs from his flat. Server also said she would call him in the first instance if it was busy. I don't think she ever liked someone having to hang around unpaid on principle cause she was a minimum wage worker too. A warning text preempted his call. And his mood was as you could expect. I confirmed I wasn't in the building. He demanded I return. I threw the legislation in his face and reminded him I wasn't being paid for those 3 hours, so I wasn't obligated to be on site. He wanted to go back to what I had been doing. But I told him that was off the table. He wants me there for 3 extra hours a day. I'm getting paid for it even if I've got my feet up. I told him his other option was to sign the promotion paperwork and then the law wouldn't cover me in the same way. It was signed before I got back to the bar. Not long after, I applied for a transfer. I worked in a pub for about 5 years. Can't stress enough how overworked, unpaid and taken advantage of people in that industry are. Man, I was lucky. Pub I worked at paid min wage, but every Sunday after lunchtime the pub closed and the owners served the staff a full roast and a glass of wine or pint. We were also allowed to drink while on shift on the previsor that the money didn't get messed up and there weren't any complaints. I guess they treated us like adult human beings and we enjoyed working for them. Honestly, treating people like adult human beings is the best way to do it. And how we used to do it on my site. People kept taking advantage up until now. Now there's hardly any liberties from when I started here. Promotions tied up in red tape. 2 for 10 meals. Offer void on weekends. In the lower 75 states and during peak hours of 2:37 to 6:48. All coupons must be filled out in triplicate in 2 languages with 3 forms of ID provided in quad. The party of the first part must get 2 drinks. 1 appetizer. While the party of the second part must have 50 of a dessert. Exactly 1 drink with 5% alcohol by volume or more. Coupon value doubled on leap day. But not if it is a full moon. What are your outlaws like there? You might have been skipped over for some extra. This guy sounds extra shady. Wouldn't surprise me in the least. You don't get out if you're on a 0-hour contract paid hourly. You do however have to sign a waiver to be hired by a lot of hospitality businesses acknowledging you're agreeing to potentially more than 48-hour weeks. That's not technically correct. On an hourly paid contract you must be paid for the hours you work, whether that be 10 or 70. The 0 hours is what the company is obliged to give per the period stated, 1 week/month, etc. I've been a manager in hospitality for almost 20 years. They screwed you. Food service industry has been pulling speep like this for decades. Last year, the workers were essential employees, but this year, they're back to being slave labor. Funny how many of those workers have left the industry for something better. A friend that used to be one of the managers at a restaurant we worked at retired finally. Now he's upset because when he goes to the local Dunkin' Donuts, they're usually closed due to being short-staffed. They just can't seem to get enough people to work for them. It's always been that way. Even back in the 70s when my ex worked there. Just to clarify, you don't have to be a minimum wage worker to think it's a scummy practice. People deserve better. If you're required to be at work, you should be getting paid no matter how busy you are or what your wage is. Just a comment from one who has had a split shift job. Fortunately, it was a summer job. That gave me enough of a taste to know how crappy life is with a split shift job. Split shifts might be tolerable for a couple of months, but they create chaos and hatred if continued much beyond that. You can't go to work and earn money, but there's not enough time to let go and enjoy yourself. The occasional going to be early is off the table. 2. Little to no regret. So I was recently about 6 months ago hired by a big company to do IT. During one of the training sessions, we were told to do 10 to 25 tickets a day. The tickets took a maximum of 3 minutes to answer if it was an easy case, as most of us had replied written up that we used over and over. So one day, I did 31. Another day, when I was being lazy, I still did 27. Boss's supervisor was thrilled at me. One of my higher-ups was not. I was clearly making her look bad. Because like I said, minimum per day was 10. And she's a skater. So she decided to spend all the free time she clearly had combing through my replies to tickets with a fine-toothed comb, tearing apart every word and reply as much as she could. 2 days after I was told my work was great, I was informed that all work had to be submitted to a higher-up and approved before being sent in. I was like, WTF? 2 days ago you said all was well. But I just smiled. Said no problem. And then was handed a printed out Excel spreadsheet by piss-lazy higher-up detailing her shredding work. 3 minutes into reading, I decided to go hunting. None of her responses were bad. All she did was reword things, some of which I didn't even write as I had used replies that my trainer had been using for years. So I had asked at some point how to know how many tickets I do. And boss's boss had sent me a link into her account where not only could I see what cases I had done, but everyone's cases. That's when I discovered why lazy higher-up hated me. I was putting her at risk of being fired by running circles around her. So since lazy worker had been there longer, of course she was listened to. After a heated senior staff meeting, boss's boss took all us newbies aside and said we all had to get our work approved by a higher-up before sending it out. Now, I had shared a lot of my shortcuts with my coworkers, so we were all doing more work than our superiors got done. That must mean we're badly trained, right? Well, let me tell you the stupidity of that instruction. You see, I worked tier 1. So anything I didn't know, I was already asking people about, as were my coworkers down on tier 1. But by not letting us submit anything at all, work came to a more or less standstill. With our higher-ups run ragged going back and forth proofreading all our tickets before we could send them. This meant that they couldn't get any of their own work done until after all us temps left for the day. Which meant our already painfully slow ticket response time was 10 times slower. With us noobs only able to submit 5 to 10 a day instead of the 20 to 30 we were doing just a day before the new absurd mandate. And the upper levels had no time to do tickets of their own after having to approve all of ours all day every day. It's really hard to explain how pleasing it was to watch lazy higher-up running around. Because of course, we all asked for her feedback. Since she clearly didn't agree with her fellow upper tier people's emails that we had to work with. So she and she alone could truly tell us how to word things. Right? After all, I had a printed Excel sheet, page after page after page of her tearing apart the replies her coworkers at her level had been using. And all our jobs were on the line over this, as we needed to show immediate improvement. This lasted a whopping 3 days before we were all fired. That's right. Fired. Because if the managers had to read and approve our responses, clearly we were not cut out for the job. You told us to get them approved. Remember? But honestly, I don't care. It was the most entertaining 3 days I ever spent in tech support. I do feel a little bad for lazy workers coworkers who were also worked to the bone doing our jobs as well as theirs. But since none of them spoke in our defense, clearly, my sympathy for their plight is limited. It sounds like you dodged a bullet not getting sucked deeper into that bad company. Yeah. Big red flag for me was a week before this fiasco when there was a company-wide meeting on Zoom so the CEOs could brag about all the new people they brought on board. All the new programs they were launching soon. And how excited he was sure we all were about these new innovations, which all sounded to me like a billion very confused, irritated emails coming our way as customers had to adapt to an all-new system. Good luck to those customers. And a pat on the head of sympathy to those still working there under the hailstorm that will be starting with all these new systems in place. I kind of miss working support. I was good at what I did for a time. But they brought in new hires and pushed us onto unfamiliar programs with minimal training, trial by fire, which was why I quit. Wouldn't accept me going back and working on the previous system new hires had taken over, so they lost a 6-month trained employee they had invested in. I've worked so many times with slackers who are only interested in protecting their power base. I almost have PTSD from working with people. The cold reality of professional work is working just hard enough you keep your job. But not so hard it disturbs the status quo. I could never find the right balance. People suck. My Mill wants to buy a car seat for her car. I don't want anyone driving my baby anywhere. I wish she would just stop. I'm so uncomfortable with many of the things she has been doing and suggesting, between her needing to stay over once night a week, to some of her suggestions for my baby, to now wanting to buy a car seat to take her out. I am not comfortable. If any accident ever happened with my baby in someone else's car, I'd die. Not only that, taking her in and out of the car seat, buckling her in right, making sure she doesn't choke on anything while she's driving. I'm so careful and a lunatic about it. Please tell me how to have my husband convey to her that I only want the baby staying home while being watched. It's causing me so much stress. I feel like anything involving my baby should involve me being the one to vice versa. My own mother doesn't do this SHT to me. Reddit can be an echo chamber, and you might have more luck over at r/Beyond Bump. I have 2 kids. 2 and 8 Mo. My parents do childcare 1 day a week. They have a car seat for my eldest, and our baby car seat straps into their car too. They don't take the baby out yet. There's no need to. But they do take my 2 Yo on outings. It's part of a natural toddler development, excluding COVID, to need to be exposed to new environments. My eels, however, have barely seen my kids due to COVID. And because they were staying over the period of a child-free wedding that DH and I were invited to, DH asked his parents to watch the kids at our house. I found it hard. My parents I trust implicitly. They raised me. I know they are safe. I know they respect my wishes. But perhaps I'm more automatically trusting of them too. My eels have never done anything to indicate they would be bad grandparents. But I don't have the same sort of trust. It's natural. And the hormones and natural instinct to protect my kids makes it hard for me to leave my kids with them. Does Mill need a car seat? Nope, not when they are small. But she will do one day. Perhaps just saying car seats are super pricey for safe ones. Just use ours in your car till baby gets to the bigger seats. Might just remove the issue for now. With time you might be more comfortable with Mel taking baby out. But you can cross that bridge when you get there. But I would say that plenty of my friends struggled with their eels who were providing childcare in the baby stage, feeling they were overbearing. But once the kids got to the toddler stage and you see how fantastic the relationship is, have warmed to their eels. Give her a chance, not necessarily with the car seat. But if you want her to provide childcare, you have to give her some space and control and pick your battles. There's being helpful and being overbearing. She is not asking you. She's telling you what's happening, and you both not shutting it down is going to make it worse. A simple coffee with husband present. We are not ready for baby to be minded away from home. We are managing okay. A car seat is useful, but weekly sleepovers are not happening, and taking Babu out in a pandemic is a no from us both. Regular visiting is fine, just make sure it suits. If she flips her cookies, then you know she needs boundaries. As a certified CPST child passenger safety technician, I would strongly suggest a car seat for Mill vehicle. If for nothing else, in case of emergency. If you are concerned about her improperly using the car seat with your low. Every police and fire station have certified CPST. Call your local police/fire station. And make an appointment and bring your Mill. With the CPST there, they will have her and you if you want to install the car seat with low to make sure everything is done properly. Have her read the car seat manual. You'd be surprised at how many parents/grand/child caregivers don't. After, quiz her on it. For example, at what height should the shoulder straps be? Where should the chest clip be positioned? Hope this helps. I am in no way saying this in an ugly fashion, but from a place of concern. You may want to read back through the responses you made in the comments to other posters. Here is why. You mention that you do not think you have anxiety, but then mention how OCD you are with baby care. OCD is an anxiety disorder. You go on to mention several times to several people how you cannot relax with others around who want to assist you and how nervous you are when baby is not with you. You also use the word lunatic in the original post about buckles and choking. This is how you describe yourself and how you would die if anything happened in another car. When you mention you do not want anyone to take the baby out, does this include your husband? Are you nervous to let him to be alone to care for the baby too? You have a high expectation of the care you want Lo to have, but you may end up setting that bar too high for even you to reach and inadvertently shut yours and Lo's support system. We look at so many stories of horrid family behaviors that it seems like we will deal with deplorable family dynamics which may shade how we see our families and experiences. I saw in a post that you are not necessarily concerned about how you Mill drives but about the other cars and drivers. There will always be factors beyond your control even when you or husband have done all the correct things. Mill is coming from a place of concern and safety too based on your story and responses. Bad roommate doesn't help with any household chores, so I make the honey jar lid so tight they can't open it without help. The roommate has taken advantage of the kindness of everyone in the house and is a manipulative cunt who lies. Their favorite snack has honey in it. They always leave the jar covered in honey and leave the lid really loose. There's also something in the honey now from their cross-contamination. So now after I use some honey I put the lid on extremely tight. I'm one of the people who has never met a jar I couldn't open so that speep is tight. Roommate literally cannot eat their favorite snack without someone's help. I know this because I watched them struggle with the jar for a long time before ultimately giving up. Then put a thin layer of Vaseline around it so it's super slippery. On the roommate? Tell me that your roommate is Winnie the Pooh without telling me. Want to make it tighter? Wrap a fat rubber band around the cap. You'll be able to damage the cap if you crank on it. Make it tightest by putting the rubber band on the inside lid to jar seal. Once the honey starts to solidify around the rubber band in between the two slip surfaces, that speep will be like concrete. Definitely won't be eating any more of it. Mix in a few teaspoons of stevia powder in the honey. Every time he eats more than a teaspoon he will be experiencing a world falling out of his bottom. Warm up the honey in the jar in a pot of hot water after adding it. And stir well to dissolve it. Then let it cool.